having a fantastic week and prepared for an amazing weekend. Hello there, YouTube. I hope all is well with you. You are ready for an amazing week and weekend, I should say, the end of a great week. I hope that's your life so far. Uh-oh, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to change this already. Okay, so I'm glad to be here with you. Hope you are doing well. Lots of folks joining us. Hope everyone's doing great. Hello there. Okay, we've got some questions here. I'm not sure how many questions I'm going to get to today. I want to cover some things that I haven't talked about in a while, and maybe I'll come back to questions later on or another time if there's a chance to. Unfortunately, this live is going to be a little shorter than it often is. Usually it's a full hour. Today, unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. There's some things I'm going to need to do this morning. So what I wanted to talk about this morning, something I haven't gotten into in a while, is talking about studies. Okay? Now, first of all, there's a couple things I think are really, really important to understand. Studies are not the be-all and end-all. Okay, studies are powerful. Don't get me wrong. Can be powerful. They can be powerful, but they're not always. And they're not the be-all and end-all. And even if the information is completely valid, the most critical thing is how that information is interpreted. Okay, it's how it's interpreted. And this is often not done very well because many people, frankly, don't think very clearly. Okay, many people aren't very logical. And honestly, given that I've now measured the hydration level over 16 years, measured the hydration level of more than 6,000 people, what I found is that virtually everybody is significantly dehydrated. Okay, significantly dehydrated. And that's important in the context of this conversation because the science says that if your brain is 2% dehydrated, 2%, your cognitive function decreases by 20%. By 20%. Okay? So anyone who's dehydrated is not thinking as clearly as they could be. Now, it could well be that you're a genius, you're 97 times smarter than I am. And I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is your function, if you're dehydrated, isn't as good as it could be. Okay? And so it may well be that, that many people are missing things that should, I think, be relatively clear and simple to understand. So first of all, when I say studies aren't the be all and end all, here's what I mean by that. Okay? People say to me all the time, where's a study that proves that? Whatever it might be, whatever the statement is. Is there, show me studies that demonstrate that. This often comes up around fasting. There are many aspects of fasting that have not been thoroughly studied or studied at all, perhaps. Okay, there's some studies on fasting and amazing things. I mean, studies that show that your body's immune function is dramatically enhanced as a result of fasting only a few days. That human growth hormone levels go up, which makes us younger. That fasting lengthens your telomeres. That hypertensive people reduce their hypertension 3 times more effectively via fasting, water-only fasting, than anything else that's been studied. And others, that autophagy happens much more effectively and efficiently in the absence of calories, in the absence of food, of nutrients or calories. And so what we know from this is that fasting has amazing benefits. Now, this, of course, but let's say none of those studies existed. Okay, let's say there were no studies that demonstrated that fasting reduces hypertension. Now, I make a video saying fasting reduces hypertension, and people say, show me the studies. And I say, well, I don't have any studies because there aren't any. I can't just show you studies that don't exist. Okay. Now, does the fact that a study doesn't exist, let me ask you a question. Before the study was done, proving that fasting was more than 3 times as effective as anything else, including medications, for reducing blood pressure. And by the way, there's a significant difference I'll come back to. But before that study existed, was fasting less effective at reducing blood pressure? Did the fact that there was a study now make it true, or was it already true? It was already true. Okay, now I get it. I mean, people say, well, I want to see evidence. Okay, well, you know what? One type of study is called, they're called case studies. Now, if you've got one client that has an outcome, that doesn't mean much. Okay, that doesn't mean much. But if I've got 600 plus clients, hypertensive clients, over 26 plus years, 26 and a half years, more than 600 hypertensive clients, every one of them reducing their blood pressure significantly. In fact, all but one of them with 21 days fasting or more, bringing their blood pressure below 120 systolic pressure. That's normal pressure, below 120. So these are people who are hypertensive, and we get them down to below 120, to normal pressure from being hypertensive. One person completed 6 points above optimal, okay? 6 points above optimal. But he started 56 points above optimal, reduced his blood pressure by nearly a third, okay, and went from having a, almost certainty of heart attack or stroke to being pretty safe for a guy who was in his mid to late 70s. Okay, so I've got 600 data points, and someone says, yeah, but there's no study. Well, those 600 data points, it's not a double-blind study. It's not. But it constitutes a significant body of evidence. Okay, a significant body of evidence. All right? You have to understand that this is what science is. Science is nothing more than an intelligent way to try to understand what's happening. So, conversation with someone commenting on one of my YouTube videos saying, you can't get enough protein, can't get enough amino acids, right? The building blocks protein, eating what you're eating. Okay? And my response is, okay, thanks. Except that I've been doing it for 31 years and maintain a high level of strength and fitness. And I've got thousands of clients doing exactly the same thing, eating relatively low levels caloric intake of fruits and soft tender leaves and feeling and functioning amazingly well. No, it's not possible. Okay, believe whatever you like. Okay, science says it's not possible because here's the calculations. Okay, the calculations don't matter. If we have something, I mean, remember, folks, consider the fact. Science says a bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly. Okay, that its mass is too great for its wing size. It shouldn't be able to get off the ground. But it does. It does. So the fact that science says, well, if you've got this ratio of mass to wing size, you can't fly. That's wrong. That's false. Okay, and we have the evidence to prove that. Okay, the dragonfly changes direction in flight 180 degrees at full speed. It can immediately turn and go the other direction. Science says, nope, that shouldn't be possible. Right, but it's happening every day, right? I mean, I've got thousands of dragonflies here on site. We see this all the time. So you want to be completely clear about this. The fact that science has a belief about something, that could be, this is the belief about how many amino acids you need to get to be healthy. Okay, if I've got a group of thousands of people being healthy without that, then guess what? What that means is that one of two things. Either there's more amino acids than they think there is, so they're not measuring properly, or they're wrong about the needs. Now, some of you already know this if you've been with me for a long time. You already have probably heard me talk about this, but when the USDA defined the recommended daily allowances for protein, they did it in an absurd way. They didn't look to see by studying what humans' needs are. They look to see how much protein a rat needs, and we're not rats. Some people think I am, but I'm not. Okay? So rats grow much faster. Their protein needs are probably much higher. They took what a rat needs to thrive, and then they doubled it to be safe. And then industry lobbyists from the meat and dairy industries came calling and said, "Hey, do us a favor, do us a favor." So they doubled it again. And so the RDAs for protein are 4 times what a rat needs to survive, to thrive. Well, maybe that's 6 or 8 times or 10 times what a human needs. The simple fact is the actual occurrence of protein deficiency problems is almost negligible. Okay, I mean, the only time this tends to happen are where people don't eat enough food, where they're clearly wasting away. There's a whole bunch of symptoms of protein deficiency. I don't have any of those. I don't have any clients that have any of those. Okay, and yet we're living on small quantities of fruit and maybe a little bit of leafy greens. Well, the science may say it can't happen, but the science, we don't serve science. Science serves us. Science serves the truth. Science doesn't make the truth. If science says this is what we need, and there are people thriving doing something different than that, then science is clearly wrong. Okay, it's clearly wrong. Now let's go back. Okay, so that's the first piece. You want to be really clear about this. Really clear about this. All right, Melon Man is asking me if I fasted from New Zealand, and I'm responding to these questions because these are super chats. Okay, so I'm going to respond to the super chats. I'm not going to take any other questions right now because I'm going to rant instead. I'm talking about something really important, studies, because this is all most people understand. What time would the daily call be? You'll have to calculate that because I don't know the time difference. But the daily calls that work for New Zealanders are 8:15 p.m. Costa Rica time. You are something like 14 or 15 hours ahead of me. So that would make it something like 11, 12, perhaps somewhere between 10 and 12, I believe, in the morning the next day. Something like that. Okay? It works. I mean, I do these calls at night when after working from 5 a.m. when I'd rather be resting or watching a movie or doing reading a book in order to serve people. And I had a brief break until recently. I'm now doing an 8:15 call. I had a 2 to 3 weeks without one in the last year. I've always had people, often multiple people, sometimes one, but often multiple people with me in that part of the world. I've been doing 4 calls a day. Now back down to 3 calls a day. Hello, Yari. Thank you so much. Yari's made a €10 contribution. So, hi, Loren. Would someone in ketosis from keto diet still lose lots of muscle when fasting? Did people heal candida with optimal diet with lots of avocado, maybe? How long to heal hiatal hernia? Much love. Or much heart, I guess. Will people lose a lot of muscle? Yes. I mean, a lot of muscle. There's always muscle being converted to sugar, regardless of whether you started in ketosis or not, from a ketogenic diet. Your body is converting muscle to sugar every single day of the fast. Okay, that's what happens. That's what it does. And that's because there's very little sugar available from fat metabolism. Now, it may well be that someone who's been in a ketogenic diet for a long time might be a little better at getting the sugar from fat because they need to, because they're not, I mean, these are people who are in serious trouble because they're not giving their bodies what they need. Okay, they're things we need from fruit, from plants. If you're on a ketogenic diet, how do you get your vitamin C? Well, you probably have to take supplements, which are garbage. Okay, not something anyone should be doing unless they absolutely have to. I mean, it's insane to consume a diet that we're clearly not intended for. Okay, the digestive tracts of animals that eat a fat or protein-based diet are completely different than those of humans. Ours are almost identical to the bonobos and chimps. We're made to be eating mostly fruit, not to be on a ketogenic diet. Did people heal candida with optimal diet with lots of avocado? Probably not. I mean, we don't. I mean, I don't know how many people heal candida on a raw vegan diet. Honestly, most of the people I see are people who didn't get what they wanted, often by going to a raw vegan diet. I mean, a lot of my clients have already been eating optimally, but still not maximizing, not optimizing their health. And so they come to me to do that. And what we see is that they heal candida via fasting. Did they, do some people heal on simply an optimal diet? Perhaps. That's probably less likely to be the case if they're eating much fat, because the fat will make them insulin resistant, which means their blood sugar levels tend to be higher, and that means the candida have more food. Okay, so they tend to be less likely to heal if they are doing that. People comment, you are very strange with your clients at Tanglewood. Is this truth or nonsense? I'm just strange. I'm just strange, period. So, I mean, I am who I am. Is that true or not? I don't know. I have clients who come back all the time and refer people all the time. We haven't advertised in 26 years. Okay, we advertised the first 6 months, and then we tried twice, and that was it. We've never advertised since. So am I strange with my clients? I don't know. That's a personal opinion. It's what people think is strange or not strange. I'm completely honest. I'm completely direct. I don't beat around the bush. Okay, my job isn't to make you feel good. My job is to tell you what you need to hear. Some people think that's strange. Okay, I'm not interested in that. I mean, I'm not concerned about what people think. Okay, I'm concerned about doing my job as well as I can, and I think I do a good job. You can disagree. Someone can disagree. They're entitled to, believe whatever they want to. How long does it take to heal a hiatal hernia? Most people seem to do fasting for 26 to 30 days for a hiatal hernia. Okay, and we've had great success with that, but it seems that some people are more prone to a hiatal hernia. Hiatal hernia is where the stomach comes up through the hiatus. Hiatus is a ring around the top of the throat, and the stomach actually comes up into the throat, which creates all kinds of problem. Okay, and so you will, if you have a hiatal hernia, you can almost certainly eliminate it via fasting, but you'll need to continue to make optimal choices afterward. Because if you go back to making poor choices, you'll probably recreate the same problem if you're prone to this issue. Okay, that's, I think, what's going on. All right. So that's it for the Super Chats for now. I'm going to go back to talking what I was talking about. Folks, I'm talking today about studies and some things that you really need to understand about this. All right. Let's look at another recent example. All right. Recent. This morning, I got a comment, again on a YouTube video, who said, I'm talking about eating fruit. And someone said, there's a major study, I'm quoting, major study says eating fruit raises your fatty liver. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is the most common liver condition. People develop a sick, fatty liver, not from drinking alcohol, because drinking alcohol does the same thing, but that's a very specific condition. These are people who aren't drinking a lot of alcohol. They're non-alcoholics, and they still develop this fatty liver. And the question is, what's causing that? And does fruit, the question they asked was, does fruit benefit this or exacerbate this? And so the comment was, there's a major study that shows that eating fruit makes fatty liver disease worse. The end part I'm not quoting exactly. I don't remember what, but the idea was that fatty liver gets worse eating fruit. Now that was the way that this study was interpreted. Okay. Does the study prove that? Well, the first thing I did was I went and looked at the study. I looked at the, the synopsis of the study. You can find the study online, and it's the authors themselves writing, saying, here's their process. This is what they did. Because you have to understand, well, how do they do that? What are they looking at? So what do? A, they wound up with, they started with more, some people dropped out, whatever, but they wound up with 40 people in each of the two groups, 40 in the control group, 40 in the experimental group. So let me start with something that some of you may or may not remember from studying statistics years ago, if you were forced to study statistics, something most people don't enjoy very much because it's a lot of math and it's a little bit difficult for many people. Okay, so statistics says that in order to say something meaningful about a population, you have to have what's called a statistically significant sample size. The sample size, the number of people studied, in this case, has to be large enough. Right now, the comment said major study. Is this a major study with 40 people eating the fruit? You know, in the increased fruit group, is that a major? Is that a statistically significant sample size? It is not. It is not significant. Okay, that's not enough to really say anything of it with any significance. All right, so you want to understand that. But you have to look at what their process was. What do? They took people eating a conventional diet and they told them to increase the number of servings of fruit that they ate each day. Okay, so what did that look like? Essentially, what that means is they had people eating steak and potatoes, hamburgers and French fries, etc., adding more fruit to their diet. Okay, so they went from whatever the standard was, 1 serving, 1 point something servings, to at least 6 servings of fruit per day. Okay, whereas the control group, they asked them to not eat more than 2 servings. So the experimental group was getting 3 times as much fruit as the control group. And what happened? Sure enough, the people eating more fruit had more fatty liver. It exacerbated the problem. And so the interpretation is fruit makes your fatty liver worse. Now, is that a valid conclusion, a valid interpretation? It is not. It is not. And I'll explain why. And again, I mean, I've been blessed or cursed, I think, with a significant degree of logic. My mind is very logical. I had a girlfriend years ago who, she wanted to try to, push my buttons. She would call me Spock because, Spock was all logic, right? Mr. Spock on Star Trek. She's like, you're like, just like Spock. It's all logic. It's not all logic. I'm more than logic. But logic is important. We have to understand how to think clearly, how to think properly, okay? You can't debate something without logic. You can't really understand something without logic, okay? So here's what this study actually told us. If you eat a conventional diet and add more fruit, and what I didn't tell you yet is the study participants also increased the servings of meat and grains, etc. They ate more of those things. And the result was they had more fatty liver problems. So first of all, given that they increased these things, can we even say that the fruit was related to the issue? We cannot. We can't say that. Okay, the only way you can do that is if you hold everything else constant. Again, this is just basic science. Okay, if I want to see the impact of one thing, I want to be able to say that eating fruit did this or that. I have to make sure that nothing else changes. But if I'm eating more meat and I'm eating more grains, I'm eating more other things, then I can't say that. There's no way to know that. Okay? But the only conclusion we can make from this study, the only valid conclusion, and I see this happen all the time, the only valid conclusion is that when you eat more fruit on top of steak and potatoes, okay, and eat more steak and potatoes, your fatty liver gets worse. That's what we know. That's the only conclusion we can come to. We cannot conclude logically that eating fruit in any way contributed to the problem. Or more importantly, because look, there's no question that if you're eating fruit for dessert, you're putting fruit on top of other things, you're going to have all kinds of issues. Guaranteed to have issues. Why? Because fruit digests in anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes. And if you're eating conventionally, your food digests in 2 to 3 hours, and in some cases more. And so if you're eating a conventional diet and you eat fruit for dessert, you are creating problems for yourself. The fruit will be fermenting in your system. Okay? You're going to probably dramatically raise your blood sugar, cause insulin issues. Okay, there's going to be more insulin resistance. There's going to be all kinds of things that occur because of the fact that you're eating fruit on top of other food. So fruit is indeed our perfect food. I'll stand by that statement. I don't care what anyone says. That's a simple fact because our digestive systems are made to eat fruit. Now, there's all kinds of things we can look at to demonstrate that we're frugivores. Okay, our canine teeth, right? These fangs we have. They call them canines. A dog can bite through the flesh of another animal right to the bone and rip the flesh off a bone. Can we do that? No, you can bite down your own finger and not draw blood. I mean, we're not meant to be doing that. These canine teeth are rather blunt. A little kitten can draw blood with just a little bit of pressure. You can't do that. Okay, these teeth are made to rip the flesh off of an apple or a pear, something like that, not to bite through a leather hide of an animal, right? Remember, leather is an animal skin. Okay, then we can't bite through that. We're not made for that. All right. We see color. Most animals don't. We see color so we can identify ripe fruit. Okay, most animals make vitamin C. Our bodies don't make vitamin C. Why would they when we're intended to get vitamin C in every single meal? Okay, most fruits are very high in vitamin C. So if you're eating a fruit-based diet, it would be impossible to become deficient in vitamin C. But other species who don't eat fruit, they make it to ensure that they have what they need. Our bodies don't do that. Okay, we don't make uricase, the enzyme to allow you to break down uric acid. Most animals do, but we don't. The non-carnivorous animals don't make it because we're eating so little protein. We don't have an issue with uric acid. All right, and so people wind up with gout and other issues because we have no way to efficiently outprocess the uric acid. So you want to understand all these things. That's all the context. But the study itself is very simple. All you can conclude is that if you do what they did, you're likely to wind up with the same results. And you can't even conclude that with any high degree of accuracy because the sample size wasn't large enough. Okay, it really wasn't large enough to give us any significant confidence that we can make that conclusion. Okay, this is basic, simple science you want to understand. All right. Now, the same thing can be said all over the place. Dr. Michael Greger, nutritionfacts.org, lots of great information. Okay. Dr. Greger reviews all the nutrition studies every year and reports on them, but honestly comes to some incorrect conclusions. One study, he tells everyone eat walnuts, eat a few, 3-4 ounces of walnuts, I forget how much, every day. Why? Because there's a study where they took a group of people and they had them add, they took a control group and they took the experimental group and they had them add 3 or 4 ounces of walnuts, and those people were, I think they even had different cohorts. The people with 3 or 4 ounces of walnuts did the best. Now, what's a valid conclusion? What does logic tell us? What can we logically conclude from that study? Well, the only conclusion we can make is that if you eat a conventional diet, adding 3 or 4 ounces of walnuts will probably make you healthier. Can we conclude that for anyone else? No. Can we conclude that if we live on a fruit-based diet? No, we can't. Okay, it didn't look at that. It didn't study that. Okay, we can't determine that from the study. The study doesn't tell us that. Okay, I see studies all the time where the study's own authors improperly interpret their own data. Now, I think in many cases they're doing this on purpose. Why would they do it on purpose? Well, you have to look, this brings us to another issue. You have to understand that studies are expensive to perform and that someone has to pay for them. Someone has to pay for studies. Who's paying for the study? That's a question you have to look at. Now, again, I've talked about this many times before, but some of you maybe haven't heard this before, and it's worth reminding you, even if you have. All right. So there's a couple of different issues here. All right. On the one hand, there was a study published, I think it was way back in the early 80s, maybe, that said that, might have even been the 70s, but it said that having 1 or 2 alcoholic drinks per day was good for you. This isn't about wine. This is before that. Okay. 1 or 2 alcoholic drinks per day. They didn't specify what type of alcohol was good for you. Okay. Now, what they concluded that you wound up with lower blood pressure, lower stress, et cetera, right? Some of these issues. Okay. Yeah. You know what? Anything that relaxes you is good for you from that perspective. I mean, yes, it can help in that way, but alcohol is a cellular poison. Alcohol kills living cells, kills brain cells, it kills liver cells. How could it be a good thing to be consuming poison? I mean, maybe the question should be, what would be appropriate would be to say, okay, interesting, having a couple drinks did this, but to point out, remember it's toxic to you, and so maybe you don't want to consume it, right? And so the conclusion we might come to is, okay, interesting. So more evidence that doing things that relax are helpful with blood pressure and therefore health, right? So are there other ways? Here's the question. Are there other ways we can? Yeah, there are. You can take a walk in nature, okay? You can practice yoga. You can meditate. You can have sex. Okay, maybe you can. Okay, now here's this, coming back around to where I started. So who paid for this research? Who paid for it? Well, it turns out it was a little company, a business called Seagram's International, and they're the largest distiller of alcoholic spirits in the world. Okay, so they have a very strong vested interest in having you believe that drinking alcohol is good for you, because you might have heard of Seagram's. Seagram's has their first brand, I think, was called, or product was called 7 and 7. I think or maybe it's just Seagram 7. I guess you mix that with 7-Up. So it's Seagram 7, right? I don't even know what it is. I don't know what that is. Whiskey? I'm not sure. But turns out that Seagram's International has dozens of brands. Okay, they make beer and they make wine and they make hard cider and they make all kinds of alcohol, not just whatever 7 is. They make whiskey and rye and brandy and vodka and all, everything. They make everything. Okay, they don't hold it to just a few different types of things. Okay, so they have a very vested interest. Another study that came out probably around the same time, somewhere in that era, that said that eating chocolate was good for you. Now, a lot of people were really happy to hear about this. Okay, eating chocolate's good for you, right? They found that there were specific beneficial outcomes for people that ate a limited amount of chocolate, especially dark chocolate, okay, because of some of the ingredients in chocolate, right? Now, I'm not saying that there's no validity, again, with the alcohol. It relaxes you, but there are better ways to do that don't poison you, okay? Chocolate is made from the seed of the cacao. Cacao is a fruit. There's a cacao tree that makes a cacao fruit, and chocolate's made from the seed. Fruit seeds are poisonous, and they're poisonous because the fruiting plant puts a lot of energy into creating fruit. Making sugar takes a lot of energy from the tree to make sugar. In order, it's sunlight, but the tree has to work to convert that into sugar. Okay, and so it makes fruit in order to get its seeds distributed away from the tree. That's the whole point, is to propagate the species. And the species don't do very well. They couldn't just drop all their seeds on the ground and have 100 trees growing underneath the tree. It doesn't work very well. The trees need sunlight. They need water and nutrients, and they're not going to do very well competing with the root system of the developed tree. And so every tree, not just fruit trees, but every tree, attempts to get its seeds moved away. Maple trees make the little helicopter dealy. Cottonwood trees fly a seed off in a little cotton ball. Some trees make seeds that stick to the fur of a chipmunk or a squirrel or something else, hoping that eventually they'll fall off on the ground in some place that's better than right under the tree. That's the idea. Okay, fruit's just another vehicle. It happens to be probably the most successful way to get seeds distributed, because you're making something that tastes good and nourishes other animal consumers. They're going to come along and want to consume that food, and that's what happens. Okay, and then they leave some of the seeds in places where they might be viable. Okay, so that's what seeds are. So the tree wants the seed to not be eaten. It wants that seed to turn into a new tree. And so it makes them toxic on purpose. You want to understand this. Okay, so question, who paid for that study? I mean, again, we know that there's all kinds of problems associated. I mean, you've probably eaten, if you've never eaten, let's try that. If you've never eaten chocolate that hasn't been sweetened, unsweetened chocolate like baker's chocolate, it's really bitter. It doesn't taste that good until you sweeten it. Okay, it's got the flavor, but not the sweetness. Okay, so they add what to make most chocolate? A lot of sugar. And a lot of it these days, I mean, cheap stuff is made with cheap products, corn syrup and other garbage, okay, that no one should ever consume. All right, and so how can you determine that eating this stuff is good for you? It's clearly not. It's very simple. You just find a study that shows that there's some advantage, and you publish that without even talking about the disadvantages. Who would publish that? Nestle's International. Nestle's is the largest manufacturer of chocolate in the world. Again, they have a vested interest in having you believe chocolate's good for you. This is often what's going on. I've got a couple more super chats, and I realize here I'm already over the time I had originally planned to be here today. Jean-Sebastian Delcourt. Loren, I'd like to point out that chimps and bonobos do eat some meat in their diet. Yes, they do. I'm well aware of that. Having studied them now for 40 years, I'm well aware of that. But it's statistically, it's insignificant. It may be once every 6 months in some cases. Okay, it doesn't play any significant role in your diet. If you insist on eating meat, when I think it's a bad idea on a whole bunch of fronts, if you insist on doing that, the less you do it, the better off you'll be too. Okay, we definitely don't need it. Thank you very much for the contribution, for the support. I appreciate that. Okay, and we have Michael from Australia. Hey, Michael, it's been a while. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Michael's made a €528 contribution, and his question is heart, heart, heart. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. Okay, I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to go back to ranting now. All right, studies. You have to understand this. This comes up all the time. People are citing studies, and you have to understand when someone says there's a study, don't take that at face value. Even if there's a study, how was it done? What are they actually saying? What was the method that they used? Was it valid or not valid? Okay, in many cases, it is simply not valid, the conclusions that they're reaching. Now, let me show you something that is even worse. Remember, most studies are paid for by commercial interests. Okay, which means what? If they can't find a way, imagine that Nestle's couldn't find some way that they studied this, and what they found was that chocolate was bad for you. Do you think they'd have published that study? What do you think? You think they're going to go around publicizing, hey, we just found out that the stuff we make that our business depends on, that pays the shareholders, pays the staff's salaries, that we found out this stuff is bad for you? Or you think they're going to be publishing that study? Of course not. If they can't find some way to manipulate things to make it look like it's good for you, you're never going to hear about it. Okay? You want to be clear about this. Okay? Don't be naive. Understand. Now, so we know, okay, maybe there's some studies that just don't get published. Right? Well, let's say that they actually need to be able to demonstrate something, or believe they do. I mean, what do I mean? All right, let's look at consumer product companies. All right, and I'm sure there's some carryover into food as well. But for instance, you take a large company like Procter & Gamble in the US. Procter & Gamble makes shampoos and soaps and deodorant and toothpaste and lotions and creams and all of that stuff. Okay, it's a huge company, billions, big business. Okay, and their products are tested. They're tested for safety, right, etc. And they're cruel, terrible things. Take a rabbit and hold its eye open and then put shampoo in their eyes to see if it irritates the eye. There are other ways to do this. This, this, in my opinion, is completely immoral. We have no right to be doing this to another innocent creature. Okay, there's no reason to do this at all. But that's what they do. And let's say whatever it is they're trying to show, they need to be able to show something. They want to show. Let's say we have a graph, right? You have an X and Y axis, and let's say very simply, this is what they want to show. I hope you can see this. It probably would have been better on white and with a thicker marker, but you can see this is the relationship they want to show. So what do? Well, they go recruit a bunch of participants. Let's say they've got, let's just say it's a big study. They've got 10,000 participants. So it's going to be hard to see these. I'm trying to see if I have anything darker. I don't really have a magic marker, a felt tip pen. So I'll make my marks as dark as I can. Give me just a second. I'm not going to put 10,000 points on here. I just want to give you the sense of it. Okay, I think you'll understand what I think you'll understand what I'm saying. So I'm talking about this. I'm talking about studies. One day, probably 20 years ago, because we were still in the time, and we've been in Central America now 17 years. So at least 18, 19, 20 years ago. I'm talking about this, and I had somebody raise their hand and say, Loren, I worked for one of the labs. You think about Procter & Gamble, they don't do these studies themselves, this testing themselves. That's not what they do. They pay a lab to do this. There are labs that's all they do. That's their business. Okay? So they've got that relationship they want to show. And this person said what they do is they get all these data points, and then they simply eliminate 90% of them. And they only show the ones that represent the relationship that they're trying to show. So for instance, again, now here you can see, here's the graph again, but you can see there's data points everywhere. So what would they do? Well, they would, again, this piece of paper is not big enough, but you get the idea. They would basically eliminate what's underneath the paper. They'd eliminate all of that. And so what's left? Oh, look, it shows that relationship. That's good. Okay, that's what they're, now, someone told me this and I thought, wow, that's, it's hard for me to believe that people are so dishonest, that they would do this. Like a big company would misrepresent this way. And I was telling this story here about 5 years ago, 5 years ago, something in that range. And I had a woman raise her hand and she said, Loren, I worked for a lab like this in my country. And the exact same thing happens all the time. Okay. So I've had two different people in two different countries working with two different companies that run these kinds of studies, these kinds of tests, and say they do this all the time. They pretend that a lot of their data points don't exist so that they can demonstrate the relationship that they're trying to demonstrate. Okay? So you want to be clear. I mean, much of what's out there in the form of studies is not really valid. Now, does that mean that there's no valid studies? No, it doesn't. Of course not. Okay, there are institutions who are just trying to do pure research to try to understand something with no bias going into it. Okay, I mean, science means no bias. Real science means there's no bias. As a scientist, you're interested in finding the truth, to try to understand something, to try to explain something. That's all. It's never about trying to get to a particular, to show a particular thing. That's not science. If that's what you're doing, you're biased. And you're likely to see biased results, and you're likely to interpret them in a biased way. So science requires you, it precludes having any kind of bias. If you have any bias at all going into it, you're not really a scientist. Okay, not really. You can call yourself one, but that's not really science if there's any bias involved. Okay, and so with a lot of these studies, you can see the bias. It's obvious. It's easy, okay? And it's there for a reason, because there's a commercial interest that's supporting the research. So even where it's pure research, you need to make sure that you're properly interpreting whatever it is that they're claiming. I've seen studies where they do their study, they tell you how they do it, they do the study, they come to a conclusion at the end. And I'm reading this going, I would come to the exact opposite conclusion. And it makes me wonder, once again, if they've been paid by somebody to say what they're saying. Unfortunately, where people and money come together, a lot of people aren't willing to be honest. Okay? And so you have to understand, is this really what's happening? Is what they're saying, is their conclusion they're coming to valid? I mean, what happens is a lot of people just read it and they go, or they hear it. I mean, the media picks up on it and says, oh, they came to this conclusion, this is what it is. But without really understanding it, it may well be that the whole thing is completely misleading. There's a lot of that going on. Okay? So remember a couple of important points here. Okay? It's about how you interpret a study. Remember, the studies, often the way they're presented, they were never accurate to begin with. They were intended to mislead you. Okay, they might have even been dishonest in their methods. All right, you want to understand this. And perhaps most importantly, the lack of a study doesn't mean anything. Now, I've had people say, well, if there's no study, it's not true. No, that's absurd. That's absurd. Okay, we don't need a study to know basic things. Okay, we don't need a study to do that. There's another one where this is just, again, lack of logic. But in a discussion, I mean, some crazy person saying water doesn't hydrate you. Now, look, folks, if you've been following me, you've heard me say over and over again, you're not going to get hydrated by simply drinking water. But does that mean that water doesn't hydrate you? Is that what that means? No, it doesn't. What it means is that until you clean your body out, you can't get enough water in to take your hydration to where it should be, to where it needs to be. Does that mean it doesn't hydrate you at all? It doesn't mean that. We measure people's hydration every day. When people drink more water, they get better hydrated. We see that. Now, it's absolutely true that the water in our perfect foods is even more hydrating because of the structure of the water. Okay, it's the how many molecules are clustered together, make it easier for your body to be able to absorb it. Okay, but that doesn't mean that water doesn't hydrate you. Water does hydrate you. Okay, and every species drinks water to hydrate. And by the way, I mean, someone said, I said, where's the proof? No, this person said, this has been proven. I'm like, okay, great, show me the proof. No, there's no proof. No proof has been offered up. Okay, the proof was a book written 60 or 70 years ago by some guy saying that water dehydrates you. That's the proof. Okay, well, sorry, but that doesn't count. That's not proving anything. That's a statement. Okay, that's it. Now, there are many studies that show that drinking more water hydrates you. The more people who drink more water have better health. They looked at specific health outcomes. Improved bowel functioning improves with more water intake. Why? Because the average person is dehydrated and eating stuff that doesn't have enough water in it. And so drinking water helps the body. The studies actually show hydration. One person said, look at bottled water studies. I haven't had time to respond, but my question is, why should I do that? The discussion is not about bottled water. The discussion is about water. Okay? If you're not aware of it, unfortunately, bottled water studies show that drinking water from plastic bottles virtually always means you're drinking some microplastics. There's always tiny amounts of plastic in the water. Not a good thing. Okay, it's not a good thing. But that doesn't mean that water is bad for you. I never said you should drink bottled water. Okay, we should be drinking spring water. Nature's perfect water, not distilled water, which comes out of a machine only, is unnatural. And yeah, before you go quoting some website by some non-scientist who tells you that urine is distilled water, it ain't. Distilled water is pure water. Urine contains up to 400 different chemicals. Who tells you that rain is distilled water? It ain't. Rain always contains minerals in every study. Okay, and more things, because rain Water only precipitates out of the air when it encounters something solid: dust, pollen, mold, pollutants, minerals in the air. Okay, it precipitates out, falls as rain only when there's something else there. It's never distilled water. Okay, never. The cycle, hydrological cycle, might look like what happens in a distiller, but it's not, because there's no stainless steel collection plate. The steam only condenses in a distiller because it hits the stainless steel plate and then condenses from there. It doesn't condense otherwise. That's what happens. It has to hit something to be able to condense. Okay, so rain is only precipitating out of the air because there's something else present in it. You want to be really clear about this. Okay, really, really clear about this. All right. All right. Studies, use them properly. Make sure that their use of a study actually demonstrates the point that you're trying to make. If you're trying to say, well, water doesn't dehydrate you, show me a study that says that. Don't show me a study that says water out of plastic bottles is bad for you. I don't disagree with you. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. All right? Make sure the study was done correctly. Make sure it's valid. If it's at all, if it sounds like, if it doesn't pass the sniff test, if it smells funny, check it out. See if you can figure out or find out who actually paid for the research. Okay, because that's usually a big clue as to what's going on there. All right. I hope this is helpful. I hope this has been useful to you. I've only got another minute or two here. Anywhere you have links to good studies in science in favor of fruitarianism. There's not a lot of studies on fruitarianism. Who's studied that? Who's paying for that? Okay, there aren't very many. Now, there is one. I don't have a link to it, though. I have a man here now who founded a fruitarian community many years ago, 20 years ago in Hawaii, and took part. There was a study. It wasn't a study on fruitarianism. It was a study on people. They looked at several things, including bone health and other things. And they looked at different populations, including the Adventist, vegetarian population, looked at people eating conventionally. And they heard about this community of raw vegans, so they went there and said, hey, can we get a bunch of people from this community who only live on fruit and salad? Can we get you guys to take place in this, to participate in this? And they agreed to do it. You know what they found? Far better bone density eating fruit than eating anything else. I mean, everything they studied, the fruitarians did much better than everybody else. But you're not going to find a lot of studies because they haven't been done. Okay. But show me a group. I mean, I'll take anybody doing anything. Okay. Eating anything. I don't care what you're eating. I don't care what could be what you think is the best thing in the world. Get your body clean. You got to get your body clean for your body to function properly. You got to get it clean and begin to hydrate it, which only happens once you clean out all the garbage, and then eat the diet I recommend. And I unconditionally guarantee you will take your health to the highest level possible. Okay. If you're willing to do that, you won't need any studies. My clients, most of them don't need studies because they know once they've completed it, if they followed my coaching, they've done what they needed to do. Okay. They've rested enough. They've sipped enough water. They're going to feel much better. Okay. Afterwards, eating a diet of fruit and leafy greens. And they don't need any studies to demonstrate that. Okay? Very simple. You can have exactly the same experience if you're willing to. All right? We're going to wrap it up here in just a moment. Please, for your knowledge, is moringa good for hypothyroidism? Are you trying to get hyperthyroidism, or what are you asking? Look, folks, this is another piece we didn't get into today. You've heard me say this if you've been around many times before, but only one thing on the planet can heal your body, and that's your body, because healing and cleansing, these are biological processes. Okay, they're biological processes. So only the body can heal the body. Can moringa heal you if you've got a thyroid issue? Absolutely not. Can it suppress symptoms? Absolutely. Lots of things suppress symptoms, but that's all they do. That's all herbs can do. They cannot heal you because the body heals itself. Okay, I heard a little snippet of a live broadcast some raw vegans talking about how the raw vegan diet or fruitarian diet healed them. Nope, didn't heal anyone. Never has, never can, never will. Okay, it can't happen. The body heals itself. The body heals itself. Now, if you improve your diet, what you're doing is you're less of an impediment to your diet is less of an impediment to healing than whatever you were eating before. If you improve your diet, doesn't even have to be perfect. Just making the diet better means your body now has a better chance of being able to heal itself. Okay, it doesn't mean it will, but it means it's better able to. So each of these people healed, got healthier. I think they all have plenty to do, left to do, but they got healthier by improving their diet. But did the diet heal them? No, the body healed itself. Period. End of story. Every time. Okay, that's what happens. Do herbs make you healthier? No, they can't. Herbs are actually toxic to you. Every one of them. They're toxic. Mildly toxic, but they're toxic. Can toxic substances make you healthier? No. Okay, we get healthier by meeting the body's needs as well as possible. Our body doesn't need toxic substances. What they do is they suppress symptoms so people feel better. Okay, that's a completely different thing. Suppressing symptoms doesn't make you healthier. It makes you less healthy. Okay, the symptoms are there for a reason. They're part of the process of cleansing and healing. If we're suppressing the symptoms, we're not healthier. We might feel better, but that's a completely different thing. Okay, if you want to feel better, you can take heroin. If you want to feel more energetic, you can take coffee. I saw your message over here. Where'd you go? I think it's Clea. Asked, what do I think about, what's my opinion on coffee? Well, caffeine is a toxic stimulant. Now, some people think it's good for you, but it's not. What stimulants do is they deplete you. They force your body to pump out a bunch of adrenaline, depleting your adrenal glands. You feel energized. You might feel clearer mentally, temporarily, but the point is, it's a Band-Aid, which always you feel more energetic, and then it leaves you more depleted, which is why it causes addiction, because you go through this cycle over and over again. Okay? You feel depleted, so you drink some more coffee, then you feel more depleted, then you drink some more coffee, then you feel depleted, then you drink coffee, you feel depleted. I've been there. I've been on this cycle. Okay, that's actually one of the things that led me to actually discovering how to get healthy. I realized I was addicted to coffee and stopped drinking it, and then I realized how completely exhausted I really was. I had been depending on coffee to keep me going. I've got a lot of energy now, in case you hadn't noticed. You know what I depend on now? Getting enough sleep, eating properly, getting sunlight, getting enough exercise. That's it. Nothing else. No substances, no stimulants ever, because they're toxic and harmful to you. Okay? They deplete you. They don't make you healthier. I just realized I'm late for my 10 o'clock group call. Gotta go, folks. I hope you've had a fantastic day. I hope you've enjoyed this, let me say, first of all. If you think there's value here, if you know people who don't understand studies, and that's most people, what I'd encourage you to do, first of all, give it a like if you like it. Give it a thumbs up here on YouTube. Give it a like on Instagram. Okay? Come on, folks. Really? Is that it? You don't think this is beneficial? Give it a like or a thumbs up, please, if you think this is useful. Just show the love. Okay, that helps. And then feel free to share this. You can share the link on your page, in your groups, on your channel. Okay, that turns other people onto it. Let's let people know. I mean, my goal is to share this information with as many people as possible. Okay, I can't fast everyone. I don't need to. That's not what I'm trying to do. We're already full here, folks, and I don't want to be open more. So you can come here if you register early enough to get a space here, or you happen to be lucky. You contact us. We have someone coming who contacted us 4 days ago and coming tomorrow. But you know what? We had somebody else cancel at the last minute. We were completely full. So if you're not in the right place, the right minute, it's not about getting more people here. We're already doing all we can do here. My interest is simply in getting this information out to as many people as possible. Help me do that. Share this with people. Let people know. Okay? This is logic. It's based on science. It's based on fact. And it's based on the experience with more than 15,000 clients in the 30 plus years that I've been coaching people. And I'm only ever going to share the truth. If there's something that, something that really demonstrates that we're better off doing something else, I want to know about that. Okay. I want to feel and function as well as I can too. All right. So I'm only going to share everything I possibly can. All right. Let's leave it there. I got to go. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you next week, same time. Bye-bye, everybody.